Hey toy fans, Aaron here. Today, taking a look at the retro collection release of Ahsoka Tano. She comes to us on I believe this is the fourth wave of retro collection figures, and the second representing the characters from The Mandalorian. So this whole wave of 6 figures is Mandalorian themed, and this came out in May of 2022. I only recently just got mine shipped from Dorkside Toys, but if you were looking for them at Target, you even likely saw them go on clearance already. Anyways, though, this figure, here's a look at the card back, where, of course, you got that standard retro collection look, the worn white edges printed all around the card. Aside from that, the rest of the card back is done in the vintage collection styling, giving you that Star Wars logo with the silver racetrack running around the sides. Within that logo, you got the Mandalorian branding. Beautiful image of Ahsoka Tano for the background. This is the very same look that we got for the actual vintage collection release of Ahsoka Tano for VC number 222. Of course, with this line, you do get that big retro collection sticker on the front of the card, and then through the blister, you got a good look at your action figure and the 2 included accessories. Flipping it over to the back side of the card, where on the top half, you've got a write-up about this line being inspired by the 1970s figures. Of course, done out in various languages. Through the middle, in that orangish red color there, you've got a listing of the 6 figures that are available in this fourth wave of the retro collection figures. And then bottom half of the card is your legal information. And now taking a look at the figure out of the packaging, and look, I might be a little biased here. I mean, I'm well into my 40s, so this style of figures is what I grew up playing with. And I love seeing figures that, of course, look brand new instead of just beat up and worn out that I have from my childhood. But I love the inspiration that we're getting with these new characters from the new entertainment and seeing them done in that vintage style, and that's exactly what we're getting here. Certainly the sculpt itself is going to be very basic, your paint applications are going to be basic, your articulation is going to be basic, but if you like all of those vintage feels, this definitely has it. Going in for a closer look at the head sculpt, again, everything does look great for what it needs to be. I mean, even those original figures were not sculpted to look exactly like the characters you saw on screen, but you had a pretty good representation, and I feel like that's what we're getting here. With that said, I think the detailing of the paint job on the head tails is just fantastic. The overall white color of the plastic is very nice and clean, and the application of that blue paint is just spot on. Great designs, nothing bleeding all over the place. I will say the color of the blue paint is probably a little darker than it needs to be, but I still love it. I love the pop that it has. Brown paint for that headband here also looks great, staying right where it needs to be. I like the orange tone of her face. Great painting for the white lines along the forehead and the cheeks. The eye paint application looks great. The lip application looks great. Getting to the arms and chest of the figure. Overall, things looking good for what it needs to be. Bit of a mismatch in orange colors, which is very typical for these figures. I believe the torso of the figure is done in the gray color and the orange itself is painted on, giving a little bit of a darker orange color. And against the arms, the orange on the top of the shoulders are a little bit lighter in color. So if I'm just nitpicking, that's really the only thing I can find. It's just a little mismatch of tone. Covering the lower 2/3 of her arm are these gray wraps of her uniform. Decent detailing here, some soft subtle folds and such, and that leads to some silver gauntlets on her forearms along with brown gloves painted in. Here also, paint application staying right where it needs to be. Center torso of the figure is a decent representation of her outfit. I love the gray coloring against the dark blue of the vest. You can just make out a little bit of a flap sculpted in on her top right shoulder. And then that all leads down to the belt wrapped around the waist, both in the gray plastic that you see sculpted in, and then layered within that same sculpt, you've got a brown belt painted in, along with a dark blue on top of that, and a beautiful silver buckle paint application being done. Through the backside of the figure, much of her costume looks pretty accurate. I like the detailing of that blue cloth wrapped around the belt, draping down the rest of her backside or her bottom, and then also just various wrinkles of her costume being sculpted in. Getting back around to the front for the legs of the figure, and that same detailing continues for the outfit. Obviously, she does have some baggy pants, and that is being represented here with this figure. And then all of that leads down to silver shin guards on the front of her legs. And then along the backside, you see some of those straps for those shin guards being sculpted in. So I think overall, if you're a fan of the line, I think this is a very good representation of those vintage figures. As far as articulation, even with those head tails coming down both on the front side of the figure and that single one on the back, you still have some decent swiveling for the head, side to side. Both arms swivel all the way around. And then both legs come straight forward and almost all the way straight back. And as for accessories, she does come with two lightsabers. One's a little shorter than the other, which is pretty traditional for Ahsoka Tano releases. She does have that white lightsaber blade, and both of these are done in the white plastic. These are molded with the same representation that we had for the action figures that came out in the 80s. Not the initial Star Wars figures where the lightsabers slid out the hand, but were rather just single plastic tube. And then within the handle, you had these three little dots sculpted in. So same thing happening here. Very much in line with those original action figures. She holds them well in both hands. They're staying put. So I'm definitely quite happy with these. So overall for me, as I've mentioned, as someone that grew up with that original vintage line, I'm enjoying the heck out of these figures. I love the representation that we're getting here with this retro collection line. Blends in well with those original figures from the 70s and 80s. And I especially like that they're doing this with the new properties. The second wave now for The Mandalorian. We've got an Obi-Wan wave coming up. And the execution on the figure for what it needs to be is, in my mind, absolutely flawless. The paint application looks great. It's a decent likeness to Ahsoka Tano. I definitely think this figure is a win in my book. So that's going to wrap this one up. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this figure in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.